$4 trillion. That is the annual sales revenue of IoT devices worldwide forecasted by 2025. 50 billion IoT devices that will be sold by 2020. This is what analysts are forecasting. And today's discussions will focus on key technologies and applications for Internet of Things devices. And we're going to be sharing how smart connected devices are changing the game for many of current players across industries, across markets, and we're going to hone in on some key technologies that are making this happen. My name is Hector Del Castillo, and I'm with Intelligent. I'm Chief Product Officer, and I'm very excited to be here and see a great audience that is very interested at IBM Interconnect on Internet of Things. Before we begin, I want to give special thanks to IBM for inviting us to be part of this great conference, and also thanks to Podcast Village. And we have partnered with them, and out of today's discussion, we're recording it. They'll be producing a podcast which will be shared with all of you post-event, and we're going to send you information where you can access today's podcast. If you're on Twitter, use these particular handles and hashtags. And actually, if you follow me at HM Del Castillo, you will see that I actually already tweeted some things ahead of time. So you can simply follow me and then retweet, and then feel free to share any information that we're going to be talking about and discussing today. And today's discussion is going to hone in on answering this question. Why does your business have to have, in today's world, a successful IoT strategy? And we're going to be sharing information that talks about why IoT is a big deal, what some of the analysts and experts are saying, what some current companies that are early adopters of these technologies and have already launched products to market, how they're doing. And we're going to also talk about how people are actually using IoT devices today. We're going to talk about some of the drivers that are enabling IoT technologies to be adopted widely across industries, some challenges that exist today that need to be solved before there's a lot of more adoption. And then we're going to focus on 9 core IoT technologies that, regardless of what your device does, you must have to have a complete solution. And 9 applications that may go across industries, across types of business. And whether you are a vendor or a user, it will benefit both. And we're going to have some key takeaways, and then we're going to have some Q&A. So why is IoT such a big deal? Well, the first thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, $4 trillion in sales is what's projected to be, and that's less than 10 years from now. Does anybody know what the current volume is of IoT devices that are out there already being sold, what they're selling, what they sold, how much was sold last year? Can anybody try to guess? It's hundreds of millions of dollars across devices. And if you look at some of the vendors that we're going to be talking about, just one device is worth tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, in specific markets where they're being introduced. McKinsey released a study in 2015, and they actually studied all sorts of IoT applications. And here's what they found. 9 different applications that are very broad, and look at the size of the market. Everything starts at a few $1 billion a year by 2025, all the way out to several $1 trillion in each specific application. We're going to go deeper into some of these applications and what some of vendors are already starting to do and are planning to introduce in the next couple of years. So Business Insider Intelligence also recently released this report that says that where do they expect adoption to occur? And so the focus today is mostly on smart home devices. That's not really where the core revenue is. The core revenue is expected to be from infrastructure, everything from cities to government, adoption of those solutions, as well as enterprise solutions. And enterprise includes industrial users. And that's where the majority of adoption is. That's what's going to be where the majority of adoption will be in the next 10 years. And the most interesting thing is that it's not just about doing incremental innovation on current devices. Everyone is expected completely new classes of products being born out of IoT solutions. That's what that blue section is. These are devices that don't exist today that are expected to be invented and introduced and launched into market in the next 10 years. So there's a lot of promise. And whether you are a product manufacturer or a user of devices, there are benefits to both. And we're going to talk about what those benefits are. Here's some examples from some of the early adopters. The Nest, the thermostat, that is within 3 years of this company being born, acquired by Alphabet, Google, and now they're basically continuing to sell this product worldwide. The Fitbit, the Amazon Echo with Alexa. These are just examples of some of these devices that are already in some homes and are being sold in consumer markets. So now we're going to talk about how people are actually using IoT devices today. And this particular report was published by Accenture last year, and they found there are 4 major applications of devices that are already in market and how they're being used. And counting down from the bottom, the top 4 uses, at number 4 is people wanting to enhance their daily experiences, mostly at home, because these are mostly consumer devices for augmenting the experience of whatever they have to do at home. And if you look at some of these products, it could be like the Roomba, the vacuum cleaner that kind of goes around and just kind of does what it does on its own, automates vacuum and cleaning of your carpet at home. It's also about optimizing home systems. And if you look at the Nest, it's really about looking at automating what most people won't bother to set up properly, even when they're moving into a new home, making it easy. It's also about quantifying the self. And what I mean by that is anything that is related to health, fitness, wellness, monitoring of health conditions. All sorts of devices for consumers, not for practitioners, for consumers, so they can track and monitor their performance, their fitness, and conditions that they may have. And finally, it's about extending home security. Bottom line is most of us want to feel safe and secure at home. And many of us are adopting security devices that allows us to ensure that when we are outside the house, even when we're traveling, we can monitor remotely what's going on at home. So these are the top 4 applications today of how people are using some of these devices that are already out in market. Here's another survey that was published also last year, but this tracks only utilization of enterprise IoT devices and solutions. And what it entails up here is that 38% of enterprise users are already deploying some sort of IoT device in the workplace, whether it's in their building, in their factory, any locations that are about what they do for a business. They're tracking different things, and they already have started deploying IoT solutions. And then a major portion that are planning to deploy in the next year or so. So we know there's going to be a rising adoption of enterprise products. And again, this is where the majority of the core revenue is at if you refer back to the previous chart as to how much consumption. Also, 63% of companies are using it really mostly to measure what's going on, to really understand what impacts productivity, efficiency, and what they do. And they're using things like motion sensors, asset management sensors, and lighting sensors. The same report states that there are 4 different use cases, from measuring business processes to heating and air conditioning to what their workers are doing and tracking the productivity of their workers and how they're following their processes, as well as operations, and specifically to utility when it comes to manufacturing, if that's your type of business. And it goes across, the benefits are across any of these. So if you look at the bottom line, today's enterprises that are already adopting are looking to measure their level of efficiency and improve on that, figure out how to reduce cost, enhance the value they're creating and delivering to customers, and strengthen customer relationships. And if you think about what is this all about, it's really about being able to grow your business, because all of these things is what you need, that regardless of what type of business you have, is what you need to understand as an executive, as a senior manager, to figure out how to plan growth and how to measure how you're doing when it comes to business growth. And ensure that you're making smarter decisions faster about what to do with your business. And then finally, security. When it comes to security, the people that are securing their IoT solutions, they're using any combination of these 5 different things, from encryption to vaults that are up in the cloud, to physical access control, to environments and assets. It's any combination of that. One of the top IoT drivers that is enabling adoption is the fact that technology costs are diminishing. And it's not just for cloud, it's for multiple types of devices, technologies, hardware, firmware, and then now software as a service that basically complements any of this. And that's the biggest driver. The problem is that today you may have rising costs as you have more demand, and that's not so good when you have rising costs at the same time that your revenue, especially when your rising costs are going up faster than your revenue, it impacts your profitability. You need to figure out how to use some of this, take advantage and leverage inexpensive technologies and new solutions that are available to be able to improve your productivity, lower your cost, maximize the value being delivered to customers. And challenges. Bain & Company just published this. It was actually performed by, in 2016. They surveyed executives specifically about, what's on top of your mind? What are your top 3 challenges that are preventing you from adopting IoT solutions? 3 things came out. Number 3, integration concerns. How do we retrofit this new solution to our existing processes, our existing tools, our people, their knowledge, and what is our total cost of ownership of the solutions? That's integration. Number 2, ROI, price versus the benefits. And most people are uncertain about how to measure ROI for IoT solutions. And then top concern is security. And this is a huge challenge because today, pretty much anything that is out there in market is completely not secure. And the reason we know that is because there's plenty of publications, and we're going to talk more about this as to why people are struggling so much in securing, because today, even current assets that they've had for a long time, even as they're migrating some of those things up to the cloud, no one really knows how to secure assets that are not physically in your building. And it's a challenge, especially a challenge for mid-market companies who don't have the expertise nor the staff, and they're resource and budget constrained. So IoT is really a combination of connected devices that you might have today, making them smart, and the smart comes from cloud-based applications, platforms, ecosystems, infrastructure that you're leasing to add the smart to your connected devices. And then finally, the delivery of information may be across devices, across channels, and it may not be a single portal, but actually multiple portals, because maybe each user type may need a different portal. And so the more user types, the more number of users involved adds complexity to this entire thing for it to work. And that is the challenge that most organizations are having, as to figuring out, where do we start? Because there's so many unknowns, and in some cases, there's a lot of unknown unknowns. A lot of uncertainty, complexity, and they don't really understand how to sell it. There's volatility on the sales side. Most people are sort of just like a deer in the headlight. They don't know what to do. But once you understand what the architecture entails and the benefits, you can actually find the right people, the right experts, bring them into your environments, and train your people on how to achieve these benefits. So now we're going to talk about 9 core technologies that I believe that are needed no matter what type of IoT solution you're looking for, or the type of devices that you're looking to adopt or looking to launch into market. So in essence, you would have a multi-sided platform, and the difference about IoT technologies is that these are not traditional IT applications. These are specifically designed to deal with convergence of multiple technologies, to be able to deal with the scale of lots of users when one device may have millions of users, and they may be virtual. Be able to analyze your information and deal with the flow and the extra velocity and amount of information that you're gathering now, and then be able to still maintain the privacy of stakeholders that you need to maintain their privacy for. All of these things are unique to IoT technologies. And the other thing is that these are specifically for IoT solutions because they may be applied across a wide range of businesses, industries, as well as solutions. And sometimes you need to have clarity and be very specific, very focused as to what do you want to do that is about your business, your users, your customers, your suppliers. Because it may be a combination of any of those. So number 1, device management. Now that you have devices on the hands, new devices in the hands of your workers or in front of your customers, how do you do the installation? And how do you make it easy for them to set it up? Automate the setup. Who's maintaining it? Who's operating those devices? And how do you worry about retiring and replacing them because they may only have a certain lifetime and they need to be replaced? All these things are things that manufacturers need to think about even as they're starting to architect a solution. And Smart Self is one of the settings that McKinsey, and look at the size of the market, between 170 billion to 1.6 trillion by 2025. And this includes wellness, this includes monitoring and illnesses, treating of illnesses, tracking your fitness, your health status, and then be able to share that information either with your friends and family or with your practitioners. And here's an example of a new product, Cardio, the smart ECG monitor that actually is something that you wear 24/7. It collects electrocardiogram information. You can view it on your mobile device, and you can share that with the practitioner. Fitness, iFit Coach, a product that actually allows users to get a virtual coach for fitness, tracks your fitness workouts and the intensity, gives you information and visualization, and it also gives you recipes to ensure that your diet goes along with your workouts. Number 2, information management. And information management, yeah, you may be in environments where you'll be handling information, but I can tell you now, we're talking about adding a lot more third-party databases that you're now accessing as a service. Collecting that information, aggregating it, you need to do everything from capturing to description, which means adding metadata to be able to then organize, then integrate, then apply business rules to different types of users, and then be able to share that information across different types of portals. There's a lot of complexity in here when you have multiple user types and many, many users. And those users are global. And smart retail is another setting that McKinsey has projected. And look at the size of the market by 2025, between 410 billion worldwide to 1.2 trillion just on retail alone. And the people who are in retail today that are not even playing right now are going out of business. And that's what's happening right now in the US. People who are not early adopters in retail are getting left behind by those that are pure digital businesses today, and those includes companies like Amazon.com. So here's the scenario. Any shopping center now will use multiple technologies to track the different types of consumers walking in. They'll know ahead that you're coming, and now they can start creating that entire experience as you're walking in, and you go from one storefront to another, and now the entire place can be really personalized to your buying habits. Here's an example of a brand new product called a smart mirror. You're trying out, and it gives you the different varieties in color or even styles, and now it's giving you the image. You can overlay information that tell you people who bought this also bought these accessories, and they can give you the price and maybe even promotion code for you. Security management. And security management, we say this is the #1 barrier to adoption, especially for enterprise and industrial users, right? So what do? Well, did anybody hear about this denial of service attack that happened in October when people they injected malware to current IoT devices at home that we may all have at home, never bothered to change the factory default on username and password, and that's public information. People got a hold of list of cross devices, and these are things like set-top boxes, VCRs, DVD players that are all connected to pretty much an unsecure open Wi-Fi network that we all have at home. They injected 100,000 devices, and those devices were programmed to send requests to DIN, who does a translation of domain names to IP addresses. And they took down major websites for about half a day. This happened in October, and everybody's saying this is a new type of threat, and this is what's coming, because if manufacturers don't think about at the very beginning on how to secure their devices, this is what's going to happen. People will hack, they will clone your device, and they will take over and start attacking whoever they want to attack. Well, what about this? How would you feel if your competitors could use your smart TV at home to spy on you? Or this could be a device that you have in your conference room, and now they're listening and recording your conversations that you're having with your executives, your senior managers, when you have a large monitor that is off, appears to be off, but they're listening, they're recording everything. And that's what's happening right now. Smart offices. McKinsey also estimates the size of the market, 70 billion to 150 billion by 2025. This is just annual revenue on this. These are just a portion because there's more applications on smart offices. Here's some examples. Smart printers. A label printer that is already networked now has some collection of status of health that the manufacturer collects, and they ahead of time can proactively tell them that they need to start ordering ink cartridge or that it needs maintenance, and now somebody calls in to set up an appointment proactively because they're tracking the health of the device through a secure portal. The manufacturer is doing that as a service to customers that have these devices deployed in an office environment. So the whole thing about securing is that it involves a lot of complexity. Today you have multi-vendors, because no one has a complete solution when it comes to securing different endpoints, different assets, different types of users, and doing identity management right. The flow of information and making sure that you're at least detecting early early enough so that you're not losing everything, because the average time of when somebody intrudes before detection in US, 120 days. How much information can somebody steal from you, exfiltrate, in 120 days? That can be a lot of your IP. API management. As I mentioned earlier, the more types of users, the number of users will add complexity. And you not only need portals for users, you also need portals for your development team, because you might have the architects, you might have the systems engineers, you might have the designers, different than the developers and the testers, and they all need to track what's going on based on the life cycle of your device. So that's a completely different portal, because that portal is only for your workers, people who are working on improving and maintaining your devices. This is for your users. Smart home, 200 billion to 350 billion by 2025. Here's some examples. The Ring doorbell. Does anybody have one of these at home? It's a doorbell that has a camera, and you can actually look through the camera on your mobile device. And you can do that remotely as well. You don't have to be at home. You can basically start up your mobile app and see who's out there that is right in front of the door of your door, and monitor things remotely. Integration is another the top 3 barrier to adoption is integration, because most organizations say, this is what's going on here, but we're not really sure how your solution can be retrofitted into what we're doing. And there's a lot of work involved in figuring out how to integrate to your people, their knowledge, your processes, and other assets that you already have around your workplace and have invested in, and now you need to now sort of retrofit an IoT solution on top of that. So it really comes down to figuring out how to integrate at the device level, how to integrate now the new data that you're collecting, how to integrate across infrastructure that you might have, different protocols, different middleware that you have to manage, and then integrate that with your processes. 4 different levels of integration along the way to make this work right in an enterprise or in a specific type of business when you're in a specific industry, specifically manufacturing. Smart cities, 930 billion to 1.7 trillion by 2025. Barcelona, one of the early adopters, and has gotten a lot of press about different things they had been doing for the last almost 10 years now in moving towards adoption towards smart city technologies and the benefits that they have been achieving by doing that. And there's lots of other cities right now that are working very hard in having their 20-year master plan integrating smart city solutions for them. Analytics is another challenge, because now you have more data, more events to track, a lot more collection, and all the process, the 6-step process that I talked about earlier, that has to happen as you're collecting all this information before you can analyze and then make decisions. And smart factories will need their own set of analytics. Look at the size of the market, 1.2 trillion all the way to 3.7 trillion by 2025. Out of the 9 settings that McKinsey projected, this is the big pound gorilla. This is where the core, where the largest size market is of all 9 settings. Industrial, and that means if you're in any kind of manufacturing, you can include yourself in there, whether you're a food manufacturer or medical device manufacturer or pharmaceutical manufacturer, this is where you're at. Because all those things are included as part of manufacturing. GE and their smart engines. These are the most powerful, most fuel efficient, less noisy, cleaner burning fuel, and continuous event management, real-time information that's being collected, and you can have optionally geolocation beacons to track where your engine is. Could Malaysia Airlines have used this technology in their plane? It's available. They just never enabled it. They never saw the value. They did not turn it on. GE, after the fact, went in mind because they do collect some. They do have some beacon that they collect in satellite, but it's a challenge because they had to do a lot of forensics to figure out what happened to that engine, to those engines that were on that plane. If they could have turned it on, that whole loss would have been avoided. At least they could have found the remains of the plane, where they're at. Low power networks. These are local networks. Usually wireless networks, short range, wide range, long range. All sorts of different networks that will be needed in order to basically cover what I would call the last mile. And the last mile means connectivity to the block, to your building or buildings, to your office or offices that are within a building, and even within a room. All sorts of different networks that we need to overlay on top of each other or working together, sending information to be able to send it up to the cloud so they can be analyzed. Smart vehicles is going to be the biggest driver towards adoption of low-power networks. Look at the size of the market, 210 billion all the way to 740 billion. Here's an example of what's coming. Waymo, anybody familiar with Waymo? This is the same company, Google, Alphabet, is turning the Google Mobile that they've been using to collect Google Maps information, and now they are retrofitting commercial vehicles and turning them in, putting the same technologies as the Google Mobile to create a commercial self-driving vehicle. And this is their proof of concept. It's already out there today. Waymo is owned by Alphabet. And they have lots of proprietary technology in order to make this a self-driving car. And here's what's happening. At the very least, even if we're not driving self-driving vehicles today, there'll be lots of more short-range communication vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to X. Because multiple vendors are trying to collect information about our driving habits for different reasons. And this is going to push the edge of the number of low-power networks, their capacity, and how they need to interoperate with each other. All sorts of different scenarios that need to be addressed. Number 8, augmented reality. And here's the size of that market based on information from Business Insider Intelligence. And look at the top 2 activities. It's going to be about buying things that are hard for us to kind of consider without having some sort of model before we buy, as well as for retail, fashion. Here's an example. This is what Sephora is doing today. Selling makeup online, and now they can take a picture, take a selfie, and now you can pick your color lipstick or eyeshadow or eyeliner and get results. This is the same technology that Snap is using. Is anybody using Snap? And they can create all these different faces, and that's augmented reality. This is the commercial application for that. Here's online furniture and Wayfair. This is typically how people are buying furniture when they don't measure, right? Here's what Wayfair is doing using augmented technology when they're purely a digital furniture store today. And mobile, by the way. Cognitive IoT is because what's unique about cognitive is that you can turn your devices from being smart, connected devices to being learning, thinking, human-aware devices. And again, it's a whole set of applications, platform, ecosystems needed to deliver the cognitive piece and making your smart, connected device into a much more human-aware that can personalize the experience with each different customer, no matter what type they are. And Watson is how IBM has introduced 6 different ecosystems today. There are probably going to be more coming in the roadmap, all apply to different industrial sectors. Healthcare, manufacturing, industrial, there's all sorts of ecosystems available that are about allowing people who are going to be early adopters because they see the value of not just having smart connected devices, but making them learning, thinking, human-aware devices when you need to ensure the safety of your customers. And here's the offering that today they have a cognitive Watson for security. Specifically, is an advisor to the X-Force team that can allow them to identify potential events of interest that need to be investigated because somebody may be attacking your infrastructure or trying to break in or trying to hack. And here's an example of what Gartner has published on their hype cycle for Internet of Things since 2016, Hyper, and all of these technologies are along this way, the ones that I've talked about. There's a lot more, but they're further out the road. The ones that I talked about are really closer to adoption. What I would consider are critical before anyone really has a full IoT solution. So the key takeaways are 7 steps, and these are all, by the way, on your handouts. Think big. If you have your own devices, start with your own devices. If you're not a manufacturer, start with the devices that you have today in your environment. Collaborate with the manufacturer and find out, what are they doing? What is the roadmap that allows them to start introducing this? More information on this, we can talk, but I actually want to stop and allow questions. And before we get questions, there's also further links available here. This entire presentation, by the way, has already posted on SlideShare. I've also shared it through the IBM app. I've been told that it's being pushed out. If you're attended this session, you should be able to access a PDF version of this entire slide deck. Here's my contact information. We're offering a free consultation to anyone that needs help or at least wants to evaluate, where to start. And my contact information. And we're ready for questions. Any questions? And by the way, Philip, we have a wireless microphone. So if you can raise your hand, if you have any questions, feel free, and we can use the rest of the time between the next few minutes for questions. Yes?
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. My question is very short. How do you see the future of smartwatches?
Smartwatches, limited. Fitbit, if you see what Fitbit is doing, they've already peaked and they're starting to decline. And the reason for